Is
Hey everybody, welcome to the live. Should I stay or should I go after you find mold in your home? It is being brought to you by Microbalance, and we're with Jonathan Farrar from JF Healthy Homes. And Jonathan is a certified residential mold inspector and a building biologist. So he is sort of the perfect guy for the job tonight, to answer questions and to go over an article he wrote for us on sinusitis wellness that is this topic exactly. So we'll pop that in the chat for anyone so you can get the link. And if you're joining us on Instagram, just DM us and we'll send you the article. But welcome, Jonathan.
Hey,
Thanks for being here.
of course. Thank you for having me back, and just blessed and honored to be here with y'all. It's always a good time, so thank you.
Oh, great. Well, we're going to kind of start with your article and go through it to give people sort of the framework from which you approach what you do as a building biologist and a certified residential mold inspector.
Okay.
And I want everyone to I want Jonathan to kind of give a background. He gave a more in-depth one on his last live, but about what he does and the difference between what he does and just what a regular mold inspector does. Do you want to kind of tackle that one, Jonathan, real quick?
Yeah, 100%. So I guess I'll preface that with, every piece of the puzzle is very important, right? Everyone has their role in helping families get healthier and live better. Ultimately, that's what we do, right? Is help families live better and find these kind of address these issues. But first, we have to find them. We have to identify the root cause, and that's kind of the preface of where we're a little bit different, right? So you have kind of three different pieces to it. You have, the mold inspector, very important, and that's part of our job. And then you have the remediator, and then you have a building biologist, right? So three kind of different roles that are all intersecting, and they're really like part of the same team at the end of the day, right? We all should be all on the same team, and that team, the main goal, the primary goal is to get the home healthy and the inhabitants healthy, right? Unfortunately, sometimes it comes to there's egos involved, and we're human and whatnot, and people think things should be done a certain way, or during PRV, people think that we're there to fail remediators and whatnot. Really, it's down to being a team. So I digress. But so the mold inspection is very important, right? That's why we're certified residential mold inspectors, is to make sure that we have that knowledge, that certification, and ultimately that training to know what we're looking for, have education with microbial and things like endotoxins, mycotoxins, actinomycetes, all these different aspects that can harm inhabitants. But that's just one piece of the puzzle, right? So looking for those things, identifying where they're at, identifying the issues, testing them, sampling them, knowing that they're there is kind of the more like mold inspection hat that we wear. We wear many different hats. But as a building biologist, we're really looking at building dynamics too, right? So we're looking at ventilation, pressurization, building envelope, communication of air between different areas. So crawl space to living space, attic to living space. A lot of those are very important, especially in areas like Tennessee, right? Because we have a lot of crawl spaces and a lot of water intrusion. So that's very important. And that's where building biology kind of steps in and wears multiple hats. So that's what I like to refer to myself as first and foremost, is as a building biologist, because we take the building science approach. We're looking at what the building's actually doing, how it's maintaining homeostasis in the home or a lack thereof, and how we can really prescribe, right? Like kind of like house doctors, how we can prescribe what the fix is, right? Long term, so that these issues don't continue to reoccur. Because if we're just hitting it at the baseline, right, at the symptom level, which is what we see a lot of times now with kind of equated to medicine, right? Just symptoms, signs and symptoms, and addressing those, we're going to be chasing the problem forever. And we want to get to the root cause of everything and solve the problem at the root cause, eradicate that or fix it, so that there is no problem once we've remediated that whole area, and we can be certain that in the future, or as certain as we can be in the future, that we've made every effort to fix it at that root core, the core of the problem, to solve that building issue.
Yeah. I mean, and for everyone sort of really new to this, sort of your doctor or your naturopath, they're there to help diagnose and treat your body, find the root cause in your body. Jonathan is somebody who is a building kind of a building doctor. He's going to go in and try to find root causes so that he can help you fix them and sort of figure out the main thing leading to the health of the home going downhill. Did I kind of say that? Okay.
What?
Okay.
Nailed it. Better than
Okay.
I could have ever dreamed. You nailed it.
Okay, so we're going to speed ahead and say that you had Jonathan come out to your house and do a full inspection, roof to dirt underneath the house, and he has found some mold. So we're going to talk about when he is presenting clients with what he found and when there is mold, some things about having helping you determine, should you stay, should you go, somewhere in between. And so we're going to kind of start with the part in his article where he says the stay or go question is actually 3 questions. You want to kind of go into that, Jonathan, and what those 3 questions are?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, again, I'll preface it, like the should I stay or should I go kind of prompt that we get from clients. It's almost the immediate prompt that we get once we, let them know that we found something and it's there, and, woo-saw, it's going to be okay. But it's a natural nervous system response, right? It's in us from our primal nature of fight versus flight and just survival, right? So I'll just say that, right? Like it's very natural. It's not anything abnormal to feel that way. And even ourselves, like when I smell something in my own house, I'm like, oof, like you can feel the nervous system start to trigger, and that there's a lot to that, right? There's a lot of brain retraining and a lot of things we can do to really get that back in order and to stop that. I like to say, like, it's like a marble going down the spiral, right? And you can't really stop it, but we can put roadblocks or we can put little buffers to try and slow it down at least a little bit and get back to that logical place, right? So yeah, with the should I stay or should I go question that we get almost every single time, it's really broken up into a lot of different points and a lot of different variables that are different for everyone. So number one being what the health implications are, right? Like, do you have SIRS? Do you have MCAS? Do you have asthma? Do you have COPD? Like all these different things that can really make you more susceptible or can cause more symptomatic response. That's going to kind of give us a better idea of whether you should vacate the premise like immediately, or we have a little time, we can kind of think through things. And it's also dependent on like how severe it is, right? So that's question number 2, right? It's number 1 is your health response, how you're doing, how you're actively, existing in the home, other inhabitants in the home, what their health conditions are, if any, if they're immunocompromised, all that. Question number 2 is going to be how severe is the damage, right? Is it currently wet? Is it current active water damage that's going on? What type, right? Is it sewage? Is it category 3 water where it's black water? And now we're talking about more bacterial concerns, right? Endotoxins, other concerns like that, potentially sewer gases. That's going to be more of a bigger, concern issue there that I would say probably, better to get out now. How much can we control that situation? And we test all that, right? So we'll test a lot of times for sewer gas and those types of different things too. So that's part number 2, right? Is the how severe is that building situation? And then number 3 is what is the exposure pathway right now, right? So what is the building doing? And that's where like the building biology aspect kind of really comes into play, right? Because we could have these problems, but they can be a little bit isolated and not really be communicating with the air that we're breathing, and thus really not affecting us in the moment, right? Or they could be fully affecting us. So like, what is that pathway? Is there negative pressure going on? Is there stack effect going on? Where are these issues residing? Are they in the HVAC? Are they in a room that you're sleeping in every single night, or next to a room that you're sleeping in every night? And what is the airflow doing there, right? So, and can we also, can we isolate them a bit, right? Can we put up a zip wall for clients a lot? Can we put some cling wrap over it just for a little bit, just to kind of isolate that a bit from sporing out? It's not a long-term solution, but these are things that we can kind of do to control, right? In our mind, when we go into that nervous system dysregulation, we want to control things, right? I think that's the ultimate takeaway. It's like it's fight or flight. So either we're going to fight and try to almost kill what we perceive as killing or attacking us, or we're going to run away from it, right? And that's a natural response, but it's oftentimes that we get to that response and we're making decisions out of fear or out of emotion, which is natural again. And I'm saying this out of being there myself. And I know
Yeah.
you have too, Catherine. So it's a supernatural response, but it's always good to take a second, breathe, maybe do some EFT tapping or just kind of some of these modalities to try and calm our nervous system, do the double inhale and breath out, and try to get back to a place of like, okay, this is not really ideal. This is not what I want. This is, very overwhelming sometimes, but like, let's try to let cooler heads prevail and let's try to make logical decisions here based on those three things, right? The health of the inhabitants, the exposure pathway, and then how active or severe is the actual event that we're seeing, the mold that we're seeing. So those I would say are the kind of basis, the peers that I would make that decision on.
Okay, well, so can you talk a little bit about some situations and give the people that have joined us some situations where staying would not be a problem, where you don't, see an immediate issue with them, like staying, even if there's going to be some remediation taking place?
Yep. 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, comes down to the symptoms, right? Like what kind of symptoms are we seeing in the inhabitants, the children, everyone in the home? Like, is one person more symptomatic than the others? And that's, that then we kind of have to take a different approach and work with practitioners and all that to kind of evaluate. And ultimately it's up to the homeowners to decide. But if you're having severe issues and we can pretty much link that to what we found, I'm going to say like ideally to get out of the home as soon as you can, not like burn it down and leave right now and burn all your belongings with it. Like there's a lot of that too. And on that note, like I'll say in these situations, the natural thing to do is to try and like search Google, right? Or like to WebMD or to now like get into Facebook groups, which some of them can be great, but a lot of times it's a lot of the people going through the same things. And I learned that one the hard way too. And it's kind of this echo chamber that can kind of warp your mind too. So I would say be careful with that too. Not that there isn't good advice on these groups, but it's oftentimes that it's going to be everyone in this dysregulated state in an echo chamber. So be careful with that.
Well, and sometimes like I just want to kind of back you up on that one. And sometimes it's more helpful to have less people weighing in and to turn towards maybe two professionals and one very level-headed family member to help with your decisions rather than a large Facebook group. Not because it's not valuable at some point in your recovery, just because when it's very emotional and sort of like emotionally driven, I think sometimes less input is better. If that makes sense.
No, I think you nailed it.
Sources,
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Didn't mean
to. I think that's such an important and vital point. And it's everyone's situation is different, so it's like you can listen to people, but I mean, I'll also listen with a good helping of salt because it's like everyone's situation is different and every house that we go to, it's a different situation. So it's like there's no control for a sliding scale of how bad or how good it is, like there's so many different variables, which is kind of the whole point of these questions, right? And so like, yeah, if you're not having symptoms, if no one's having symptoms, obviously living in mold like is never good for anyone, whether we're symptomatic or not. And it's a matter of before someone shows symptoms, or we can link that to one of our markers on our testing, especially in the SIRS panel, right? But if it's not like something dire where we're having major flare-ups and major issues, I say it's okay for now. There's other things too, right? Like if you have a bathroom, let's say we open the vanity and there's a bunch of chetomium under there, which we found time and time again, or stachybotrys under there, these more dense, heavy, sticky black molds that are higher mycotoxin, more aggressive mycotoxin producing, then I'm going to say probably a good idea to vacate as soon as you can, right? Clean materials with microbalance and get out as soon as you can. But if stuff is more isolated, like in the attic, it's kind of breathing out, especially most of our attics are ventilated, or it's in a crawl space and we're not seeing too much with smoke testing, seeing too much air communication back and forth, then I'm going to say, okay, ideally, if there's no symptoms, if it's kind of isolated to these areas that are not part of the living space or shouldn't be part of the living space, then there's a little bit more ability to stay in that space for a little bit longer, depending on how you feel, right? And then a lot of this too is like it's all part and parcel to the nervous system, right? It's like once you find out that there's mold in the home and your mind starts going down that rabbit hole, the stress alone can cause a lot of these reactions, right? So there's a lot to that with placebo, but also how stress affects our bodies, and we see it a lot of times with MCAS too, right? Like someone finds out that we found mold in their home, and then a lot of their symptoms from MCAS start acting up, right? They're all linked, and it's all linked to our nervous system, our emotions, all of our different systems in our body are all part of the same human body, and it's all gonna every single piece is going to impact one another back and forth. So it's important to remember the emotional and mental part of that with the nervous system. So I don't know if I just ran, or I hope I answered that.
I think it kind of ties to our last live with Christina on mental health. She made this comment, and it has stuck with me. And she said, it always perplexed me when people had always been told that it was all in their head. She said, because your head's attached to your body. So if you're feeling something and it's in your head, like it's legitimately making you have symptoms. So, it all kind of makes sense.
100%.
But okay. And so then on the flip side of that, what would be a situation where you would advise, and you kind of talked about this with the vanity, but that you would probably advise the family or whoever was living there to find maybe a temporary space to live. And this doesn't mean that Jonathan's ever going to advise you to like burn the place down. I mean, this just means that it's probably best to not be living there until you can get it under control. Yep. Is that a good way to say
100%? Yeah, I think you nailed it. And it's all down to the healing aspect, right? Like that first rule is getting out of exposure if we want to heal, right? And that's another thing I'll touch on too, is like you on social media, we have a lot of people saying like, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I think like that is just needs to end too, because it's really not up to other people what our bodies can and can't do. So it's really up to ourselves and our bodies and how we heal it, and our own person, and whatever faith you have, to believe in what you can and can't do. So I'll preface it with that, and I'm throwing a lot of prefaces out there because I think there's so much that needs to be prefaced in this very extensive and kind of intense kind of considerations, right? And it's so life changing and upending, right? Like we're completely turning your life around if we're telling you it's better to get out of that space. So like we always have to remember to get back to that point of centering and grounding ourselves, earthing, right? Which we'll talk about EMF one of these days. But so a situation like I would say, like I would advise a client to look into potentially like maybe vacating temporarily would be, when they're having those flare-ups, they're having those major symptoms, they're trying to heal, maybe they've been on a protocol for a while and it's just not working. Then we know, okay, this exposure is so high, it's affecting you so much, and there's so much communication with those pathways of where those mold reservoirs are, or those toxin reservoirs are, that we need to get you out of the space so that we can remediate it, get it back to healing, small particle clean, and get the remnants out so that we can put you back in the space that you can heal in, right? Or that your body has a better chance of healing in. So there's that, right? If it's obvious mold where it's in many different areas of the home, including bedrooms and drywall in bedrooms and all these different areas, like then it's a little bit more like, okay, this is directly in your space. Even just a small hairline crack is going to potentially lead to, communication of those biotoxins into your space and affecting your health. So I think there's that. And I think, just looking at the overall like symptoms of the individual, but that kind of plays into like the remediation aspect too, is like we hear people ask about if they should leave during remediation. I think there's one question later we need to answer on that, but that's also like we like people to be out for remediation, but it's not the end of the world if you have to stay in the home during remediation. There's just more kind of protocols and stuff we want to be aware of, but it's also the stress, again, back to the nervous system, the stress aspect. Like it's traumatic, it's you're going through a trauma event, and you have to kind of grieve what you're going through. And it's all part of that same grieving emotional process that we have to really kind of train our minds to get through and to go through somewhat logically, but of course it's going to be always partially emotional and partially hard to separate those two and compartmentalize because it's your home. You know, it's your safe space and it's your family's health ultimately. So it's almost impossible to say that there's not going to be some degree of emotion or nervous system to play in it. So yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, that was a good comprehensive answer. Okay, so before we kind of go on to questions, what are some good questions for people to ask their team, whether they use like you and a building biologist or an IEP or even a mold dog that provides them with a thorough inspection and a detailed report? What are some good things to ask when someone is trying to make a decision about maybe going to a family member temporarily or just staying there and starting sort of the fix and remediation process, which is really detailed in the article. So I really encourage everyone to read it because we can't get to all of that tonight. So
I wish we could. Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot. I think they should be, no matter what, right? No matter who you have out there, an IEP, inspector, a building biologist, mold dogs, like all of them are fantastic. Shout out to Stacy with Mold Pups. They did a great live too. That was a really awesome one, a great article too. So there's a lot, right? Like they should be providing you with a comprehensive report because ultimately, like, they're the ones who are coming in and planning for what the remediator needs to do, right? Like if we're having a remediator come in and plan their own remediation, like we already know something has gone awry. There are times, of course, where it's like we need immediate action. Like, you know, there's been houses, I just was at a house right now where it's like we need to get that going ASAP because there's an obvious sign of water damage and it's occurring constantly right now. So we need a quick fix there, right? So like, that's something where I'm like, we got to get this remediator in ASAP. Probably won't even have the report or results in yet, but like we need to get it fixed, right? So there's stuff like that, but I think like ultimately you need a good report. Number one, that's really the goal, right? That you're getting from an IEP or a mold inspector, so that the remediation team knows what they're looking for and they have the protocol to go by, right? Which should be a medically important remediation. I will also say that should be the only style of remediation. There shouldn't be multiple variable types of remediation. There should be only one true type, but we are where we are and we're changing that for the industry, hopefully. But yeah, so you should ask them those questions, right? Like where were the areas? How much is it? How bad is it? What are the photos, the videos, all the collected evidence you can get? Data, right? Like data is king, right? You have a lot of people like arguing about whether qPCR or, as it's called, ERMI, EPA 36 are good or bad. And it's like, it's just another data point, right? Like there's flaws to it and there's benefits to it. So take it or leave it. Like, I think take it because it's more data. If you can afford it, it's a good place to go on. But if you're going to do that, like throw in endotoxin, throw in actinos, right? Like the more data we can get to see how the home environment is affected, then we can link that with a practitioner to the environment of the body, right? And like, so we're trying to cross correlate these two areas and connect them so that we can start to make fixes in both. But if we don't have any data to go on, then we're really kind of just shooting in the dark, and that's a situation, you know? So we do help, like we virtually consult with people and help in that regard, but sometimes it can be really difficult because it's like, we might have to ship you swabs and tell you where to sample and whatnot, or we're going off of a report that's not super comprehensive and just kind of spraying and praying and trying to go for the best approach to write a remediation protocol and then following up after that remediation is done to make sure that everything was done appropriately before built back. So yeah, I think just asking them like, what's the plan? Like, what is your part in it, right? Like, are you going to be a consultant with a remediator? Can I have you consult the remediator? And what their protocol is. Like, there should be a protocol that is a third party protocol that the remediator is then following. And then a third party, again, whether it's the same IEP or same mold pup owner or anyone like that, coming to check the remediator's work, not to prove them wrong, not to discount their work or anything, but to get a fresh set of eyes on it from a different mindset, from that IEP mindset, and to verify that their work was done properly. It's never to be, to fail people out of wanting to or whatever. Like a lot of times it gets to that point where it's just like us against them. And like I said at the beginning, we're all a team to get the family better. And if there's one person on the team who's not of that mindset, then it's time to start looking for someone else to fill that role, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and the testing is just a measurement, like at the beginning, so that when you do the post remediation verification, you have something as well to reference, you know, to make sure that levels are lowered or, you know, hopefully gone, or, you know, to standard. So, okay, well, that's really helpful.
You just said something like super important too, like to standard. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh, no, that's okay.
Loop us back, but the standard is so important, and that's part of it too, right? Like you have people saying like 100% mold-free home, mold-free, and it's like, number one, it's not going to happen. Like I'm not saying that to be like defeatist. I'm not saying that to be like, you know, to be any certain way. It's just to be realistic, right? Like we live, especially where we live, like in a very, you know, a lot of airborne particulate outside, a lot of mold outside. Like I'm constantly taking spore traps outside, and I'm like, holy moly, like that's what's in the in the air outside.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy, you know. But our bodies are meant to adapt to that. Our bodies are meant to take on that baseline, that condition one, normal fungal ecology, right? To be, you know, to be super professional about it, right? But that's what we want inside, right? Like we want a healthy balance. We want to live in line with nature in whatever area of the universe that we live in, right? Like that's how we should be existing. We don't want to live in a bubble. Sure, like air scrubbers are great. Sure, you know, air purifiers are great. Having systems on HVAC to balance, right? Really to balance the environment and the pressurization mostly is incredible. But we also want a healthy balance with nature. And ultimately mold has been here long before us, and it's going to survive long after us. So we want to have that homeostasis and that balance with nature inside and outside. When that becomes imbalance is when we have a problem, and we want to adjust that at the root, at the core of the issue, and then rebalance that interior environment. So I just wanted to touch on that because you said that very, very nicely, and I thought that was a good point.
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to live in your home without being immunocompromised. And when you're the, you know, normal fungal ecology, you know, takes on like a life of its own because of a leak, or, you know, water reaching building materials that were never supposed to be wet and then growing, you know, toxic mold, that's when you worry. Not so much about, you know, the mold outside, although that can become a problem inside.
It can.
You have a lot of, you know, ingress and, you know, inside and humidity too. So
that's all important. That's super important to control. And with that too, like if you're having reactions still, and like we come to your home, or someone's come to your home, we found nothing, and like you're still having these mold or biotoxin related you know, issues or concerns or symptoms, like that's the best time to work, you know, even previous to that, to work with a practitioner and really get that dialed in, run labs, like see what's going on internally in your body. That's allowing for that proliferation of inflammation to the point of like not even being able to take being outside or going. All the buildings we go to are pretty much moldy, right? Like I'll say that, especially in Tennessee, like I go to a restaurant and I'm like mold. Yeah. Like I used to like lose it and be like, I'm not eating here, but now I'm just like, if I do that, like I'm never going to eat anywhere. I'm going to starve, you know? So I mean, like being able to handle that exposure, right, that we're getting into, and Aaron and I both are in exposure all the time, but I'm on a protocol because I know that, right? Like I know I need to balance that out. But if there's that concern where it's like you can't even be exposed to a little bit without having these flare-ups and having these issues, like it's really time for us to like talk to that practitioner and get to the root cause of it, right? The root cause is those inflammation. And I will bring in EMF again because EMF is my baby. But it's like, you know, like it's everything, right? Like I think it's easy also nervous system wise to hold on to one thing and think it's just this one thing that's after us all the time, the mold, or it's the endos, or it's the actinos. And it's like we need to take a zoom back a little bit and be like, look at all the different aspects of the toxins that we're exposed to these days, right? Like we're in a plethora of toxins constantly, including EMF, including endos, mold, actinos, water, air. So I think it's very important not just to have a mold inspection, right, but to really have like a healthy home inspection. And that's what we like to provide for people. So that's also not to throw more out there and be like, there's more things that are harming you. You thought it was, but it's like, let's say,
Yeah.
approach, because you can lower those things very easily, right? Like they're easy to lower in small amounts, but those small amounts add up to a big amount that lowers that toxin bucket and allows you to be able to lower inflammation.
Yeah. And when you're dealing with sensitive people and people that are made sick because of mold for whatever reason, a lot of times there's a multitude of reasons,
Right.
but they tend to be sensitive to things like EMF.
Yep.
Like I'm definitely one of those people. And I mean, one of the things that changed my life, just to reiterate what you're saying, is when we did sort of like a kill switch, so
Yes.
that, we just have no Wi-Fi at night. I
I
mean, it
love
can't be all day, but at night we just don't have it buzzing through our house. And that's made a huge difference.
That's
So,
amazing. And it's such
yeah.
an easy fix. Like that's why like EMF for me, it's like it's almost like we have to check it, because like a lot of times EMF we can walk away that day and we've already had implemented fixes that will lower that inflammation, lower those responses potentially, and lower a lot of these concerns just almost immediately. Whereas mold and biotoxins are a little bit longer to get to that point. But I love that. I love that about EMF. It's a lot of quick fixes. So
Yeah, and very helpful.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to jump into questions. I'm going to start with the ones that were submitted and kind of pop them up on the screen, and then we'll go on to some of the other ones. So let's see. Should I do the small particle clean myself if the remediation is only in one area?
Yeah, it's a good question. Small particle cleaning is definitely, it's a beast. It can be pretty extreme, and thankfully we have microbalance health products to help us there. I guess it would depend, right? Like it depends on what kind of remediation we're talking about, like how extensive it is in that one area, right? Like it could be one area, but it could be very extensive in one area. So, and oftentimes like we think it's just one area, but then they start pulling out boards, they start pulling out drywall, and we start seeing pathways and where it's coming from and all that too. So I would say, yeah, it's possible. I would say ensure you're wearing PPE, especially for sensitive individuals. I would say even more so than that, like ensure the remediation zones, containment zones, decontamination zones are set up properly with an IEP. Like a lot of that we do as well, coming on site before or during remediation to make sure that there's a manometer and there's negative pressure going in there constantly. There's no compromises in the actual setup of the remediation zone, right? Like that kind of changes the skew of things. Because that can contaminate whole areas, right? Like I've seen remediations where the remediator is just pulling things out through a living space, and then it's like, well, now we definitely need a small particle clean, but it's just kind of up to like the different variables. You can do it yourself, and we can definitely help with advising on that, but it's oftentimes better to have like a professional team do it, just for the fact of like having closed off gasketed HEPA systems and proper removal techniques and that kind of stuff. But it's not something that you cannot do by yourself, especially with the microbalance products. So
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of times we talk to people like our customers who will advise them to have the company small particle clean the areas that are like the areas that are deemed affected by someone like you.
Yep.
And then maybe take on small particle cleaning room by room in the rest of their house that was not necessarily touched by the mold, but as you know, is incredibly important to recovering the health of your home, because the cleaning aspect does it goes on for months afterwards,
Yep.
Even after it's been, post remediation verified. It takes a little while to get everything sort of back to homeostasis. So that's kind of what we tell people. But
Agreed.
okay,
And
how do I?
sorry. I'll just add on a little bit. I would say it should be a maintenance thing, right? Like you can small particle clean, continually, and we would definitely recommend that. So, so yeah, it's definitely something that you can keep doing, over the course of a few months. So.
And when I say like it's definitely like a modified version. When Jonathan's talking about it, we're talking like almost the white glove treatment where you would run your hand across the surface and you should have nothing on that glove because it's so clean. Post like the cleaning after they've done the demo and remediated. So
100% nailed it.
Okay. How do I know if containment is properly set up?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question and very important for sure. Yeah, so I would say work with an IEP, but also like if you're examining it yourself, right, looking for those points, like we call it fish mouthing, right, and any of the tape along the walls, like should be double taped. They should be using at a minimum 6 mil, following IICRC S520. If it's not by a window or some point where they can discard materials in a trash bag that they're wiping off, then like they should be building an egress or some sort of breezeway that's fully lined, as to not contaminate the rest of the house. If that's like really not doable and it's just like it's really interior room, then they should at least at a very minimum have a decontamination chamber, right, where they're actually taking their clothes off, decontaminating bags, wrapping it and wiping it again before they take it out through the home. That's very important, right? Because that cross-contamination barrier is very easy to mess up. And they should have like, they oftentimes don't, but there should be a manometer that's constantly measuring. It's a little loop that you see sometimes on like a radon fan, a liquid manometer that has the actual measurement on there, or a digital manometer measuring pressures, that shows that there's actually negative pressure in that room, right? Like we don't want too much negative pressure for it to pull the containment in on itself, start pulling stuff from walls, and you can start creating a lot of issues there. But we want a healthy amount of negative pressure with an air scrubber that's ducted out. Very important too, right? Because now we're not just talking about HEPA is great, but it's only going to get 99.97 down to 0.3 micron, right? We also have ultrafine particulate coming off of those mold spores. A lot of times now, as it's impacting and hitting HEPA, we're starting to find that those are liberated. So we're having more ultrafine particulate that's getting liberated from the mold spore. Plus, we have hyphal fragments coming from cell wall degradation that we want to make sure is exhausted out, right? And as they're tearing up walls, as we're pulling stuff and being very aggressive with the environment, we want to make sure we're controlling that. So, yeah, let's say check all those things and ask them, what's the negative pressure, and how are you guys maintaining that? Sticky mats, PPE, all the good stuff. But yeah.
How do I make the remediation company use the products I want them to use? They want to use chlorine dioxide.
That's where I would say like it's back to that point, right, of having that IEP or that mold professional, building biologist write you that protocol, right? Because ultimately now, like, it's a third party and it's not, you have to advocate for your own health, of course, right? Like we have to be adamant with that with our remediators. And as much as it sucks sometimes, like sometimes it becomes an uphill battle. And sometimes you don't have like the choice of which remediator if you're going through insurance a lot of times, or you just don't, you live in an area where we don't have great remediation options, right? And that's where it's even more important to have a third party who can vouch for you, who's certified and can vouch for the medically important side of things, right? And say, no, we're not using chlorine dioxide because this, and this, right? These are our concerns. And start to interview people, right? Like if you ask a remediation company, or tell them rather, this is what I want to do. It's your home, like this is your space. So don't let them gaslight you into anything. And again, we're on the same team. So if they're already trying to gaslight you, we already know there's a big problem. If they're trying to tell you, no, we're not doing that, that's not how we do things, then like, I'm going to say, look for someone else, right? Get multiple opinions, like advocate for yourself, because ultimately you're going to be your biggest advocate. And we help clients with that all the time, right? It's like, they don't want to have to fight with this remediator, and we don't want to either, but we're going to tell them, give them the facts and give them the truth of the matter of what we're asking for in this remediation. And if they can't do it, then that's totally fine. We'll go elsewhere. But we want to make sure that we're not going to risk making the inhabitants more sick after, spending their hard-earned money and stress on this very, all-encompassing situation. So
yeah,
just
at the very least, if they insist upon using, just only one type of product, ask for the reasons behind that, in writing if they have specific reasons, and ask for the SDS sheets at a minimum to see exactly what's in it, because for many times only active ingredients are listed on labels, especially if it's EPA approved. And unfortunately, EPA approved does not mean safe. It just means that it can make the kill claims that are on the label, which sometimes is the opposite of safe, unfortunately. I think we're hoping that's changing, but who knows?
And if they're like saying stuff like treat or kill or this, we're gonna annihilate this mold. It's like, you already know we're gonna annihilate it. Like they're stuck in the old ways, and those ways are just, they're broken now, so they need to be fixed, and that's what we're trying to do. But And that's nothing against them, right? We only know as much as we know and all that.
Right.
But we gotta really reset this whole thing and get back to that removal mindset. So I would say, yeah,
Yeah.
that's very important. And then also, what's their culpability? What is their responsibility if it goes awry? And we see it time and time again with clients where they're like, we had this remediation and we're all just doing horrible. I smell chlorine in the house, or I smell these chemicals. And it's like, well, what was in the contract with the remediator if that were to happen? Is it on them now? Like, are we going to get into legal concerns now? Like, where is this going to go? Right. So like, ask them up front, interview them, give them those hard questions to field to make sure that they stand behind what they're professing is the only way to do it. Why and what is the responsibility if it goes awry and you end up making us sick from VOCs now? What's the culpability? So
yeah, and I mean, and often too, removal and cleaning are remediation. The quote unquote sanitizing step, unless there's black water or like that type of contamination, sanitizing is often not necessary with mold if the remediation is done correctly.
nailed it. 100%. There is bacterial concern, but yeah, it's if they're removing things properly under containment, we're doing things that way. Like it really is so simple that it's almost funny sometimes that it's like we've made it so complicated and now throwing all these things at it, that things that we just don't need that are usually making the problem worse. Like it's just funny because it's like we really just need to take it back to basics, right? And just get back to that removal mindset. And like you said, cleaning, wiping it down, very simple with something like microbalance, very simple and easy, and it's going to be the most effective. So
yeah, and it won't make you sick. Can a crawl space ever be made safe for a mold sensitive person?
Yeah, I would say so. I think like crawl spaces inherently have a lot of concerns, right? There's a lot of caveats to them. They present a lot of different variables, which a lot of times are not super simple to control. And that's usually from the build, right? Like what's the drainage plane? Like where is the water going to? That's where we see the biggest problems with crawl spaces is the exterior intrusion into the crawl space. Of course, there's concerns with the crawl space too, with soil bacteria like actinos, right? We even have sometimes endotoxin concerns down there with pests and whatnot, and a lot of feces from those pests. See that pretty often. But I think, yeah, having it properly remediated if there is an issue down there. Ideally, we start with a clean crawl space that's properly encapsulated, right? And that means getting a proper encapsulation done with a company that knows what they're doing, laying down gravel as a capillary break, controlling moisture from the outside and on the inside with a dehumidifier, ideally. And then you want to make sure that your ductwork is staying nice down there and it's not condensing, right? That's where we start to get a lot of that is sweaty ductwork in crawl spaces. Is almost every single time we get called into a house, we see sweaty ductwork down there. And then we're chasing a problem, right? Because then all the joists are moldy, or a majority of them are moldy. Rim joists around the outside are taking on a lot of water because there's no drainage solution. And then we try to install a dehumidifier and like, yeah, we'll put a dehumidifier and it'll kill the mold. But we got to remediate that whole thing now before we put any of those systems in there. And a lot of times we have to redo ductwork too because it's flex ductwork. So there's a lot of caveats, but a simple answer is yes, 100%. Anything is possible. It's all about how we do it and how we plan the attack and the approach of getting that done.
Yeah, and then how you're going to maintain it afterwards. That's a big one.
Maintenance, yeah, the maintenance and how much that air communication, like it's crazy. We see gaping holes in crawl spaces for chases going straight into the home, and it's like ideally you never want to be breathing your crawl space air, no matter how clean it is, no matter how encapsulated it is. Like we just don't want to be breathing that air, just like we don't want to be breathing attic air, right? Like we want an environment in these airtight homes that we're building to be just that environment, right? That's not negatively pressurized, pulling in air from either one of those top or bottom spaces. And that's a huge concern too. So sealing all those points is very important too. If someone has like a big bacterial concern and they're, in a situation where their SIRS is really acting up, MCAS is really acting up, I would say maybe a crawl space is not ideal at this time. If you're looking to move somewhere or looking into a house, slab might be a better option, even an unfinished basement. I say that, please don't come at me and attack me, everyone. Like, I know basements is the bad word, but can be done right too, but ideally a slab
Mhm.
would be better if you're going through those huge responses, and not having to control all those variables or risk those things that can happen with a crawl space. And I will say one last thing, I do like crawl spaces for the simple fact that we can control and we can find a lot of those issues with plumbing down there, as well as with the ductwork too, right? So there's a lot of ability to get visual on things that I like about unfinished basements and crawl spaces, but maybe not ideal for someone who's in the thick of healing or in the thick of their symptoms.
Yeah. Or if you've already been like sensitized in another home, maybe not, trying to take the crawl space off the table as a problem.
Yeah, yeah. Better to avoid sometimes.
So what kind of post remediation testing is best?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's kind of nuanced to the situation, but for us, it's really like you said earlier, the white glove testing, right? Like, so sometimes we'll actually test with a white glove or a black glove. That's a dust test, right? Not not the dust test that we're talking about with qPCR, but literally a visual dust test. If there's dust in a remediation zone, it's an automatic failure for me. Like that's just should be controlled. And a lot of times I'm not blaming the remediator. They're in there sweating and working very hard and in masks, hopefully, getting epoxy and whatnot, just like we all are. So they can miss areas. It happens. There's a lot of different cubbies in different areas in some remediation zones. So that's where it's important to have a PRV. Aside from that, if the dust is good, which hopefully it is, then we're looking for air sampling right in that zone, but not right after they just shut the scrubber off in that zone, right? It's not going to give us the best picture. Like, let's give it some dwell time compared to an outdoor baseline. But I'm not just going based on an air sample, right? Because we all know the caveats with air samples and the issues that can occur there. We want to get in there and it's almost like a mini inspection of that zone, right? Like, we're looking at all the framing, we're looking at all the drywall, we're using different lighting techniques, flashlight techniques, UV light, all these different to find if there's residual growth or residual areas they might have missed, if more needs to get taken out. Even a boroscope sometimes we'll have to look into a wall cavity and see how far, if there's more growth that hasn't been cut out, right? Moisture meters, all that. It's almost really like a mini inspection. And then on top of that, we're doing surface sampling. So tape lifts, swab sampling, all that. Some people will say like, well, why don't we do qPCR for clearing those areas? Well, if there's no dust, then we really shouldn't be able to do a PCR test in there like an ERMI or HERTSMI, anything like that, which would be awesome if we could figure out a way to do that. But ideally, there should be no dust in there. It should be a clean environment post remediation. So usually, yeah, visual, mini inspection kind of on its own of that zone, and then air and surface sampling, I would say, are the best.
And also, I just wanted to make sure everyone understands that post remediation testing should always be done before any building to rebuild a space or to put it back together occurs. So, and even before the containment comes down.
Yes.
So that's really important too, because sometimes I don't know why this happens. I don't know who allows it to happen, but I've seen cases where containment's ripped down. It's kind of like rebuilding has begun, and then they come in to do the post remediation testing, and there's no way that can be like a clear litmus test once that happens.
That's a big no-no. Also, like that's a great point, and it's such a big no-no. Like, you got to get someone in there 24 to 48 hours, maybe 72 hours if you can. Like, sometimes it doesn't work out like that. We try to get in there as quick as possible after that zone has been remediated and then cleaned, right? And they have the scrubber going. And then it's important, like a lot of times you have remediators using encapsulation paint. That's a whole different kind of tangent that we could go down for another hour. Not our favorite, but if they're going to use it, like, you need to make sure in that contract, and it says like in our proposals and our protocols, that they cannot cover anything with that paint before we get in there to inspect it, because that's a really good way for them. I don't want to say, assume things, but to potentially hide areas or to cover them up so that we can't get visual on it and potentially fail or say that they need to come back and fix these issues. So that's a very important one. Like you said, the containment not being down, and the encapsulation paint, if it's going to be used, to not be on yet before we PRV that area.
Yeah. Okay. Even if the remediation is small, is it best to leave until it's complete?
Yeah, I think that's where I think the article will help you in that regard. And I would say think about those three questions, right? Like how susceptible, how much of a reaction you have, what stage are you at in that healing, all the inhabitants, right? And then like how extensive is it, right? How extensive is that issue? There you go. There's the link right there. Woo! Um, so there's that, right? And then also like the stress aspect, right? Back again to the nervous system. Is it going to kind of, cause do you foresee yourself going down that spiral if you start seeing walls torn out and stuff taken out through your home? Like sometimes out of sight, out of mind is better, right? Like I stayed in my house during however many remediations I've had at this point. I've lost count because of how poorly my building is built, but that's an aside. Like it really can take a toll on you, and it can really send you into a spiral if your mind is not in that spot where you're ready to see those things happening in your home. And it's especially if it's a home that's been in your family for generations, let's say, or like it's your place, it's somewhere that you love and you plan on giving to your kids or something. Like then you start to think about all those different aspects of seeing it torn apart, right? It's very traumatic. So I would say, yeah, just kind of consider some of those things. And typically it is better to be out, right? Like even if it's small, just to kind of take that break and maybe go for a small vacation or a small trip with the family, and out of sight, out of mind, give yourself some room to breathe. But I would say the caveat to that is like, make sure you have someone like an IEP on call who, if something needs to be handled, or if a lot of times, right, as they're remediating, it's small, and then they start opening areas and it's not as small as we thought, right? Like there's a bigger issue. So it's important to have someone on hand at your beck and call that can help coordinate and make those decisions with you, whether you want to be involved or don't want to be involved. That's also important if you do decide to leave, but oftentimes it is better to be out while they're remediating.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I did a little of both, so.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
it's like it's so variable person to person, and the area, right? Like is it an area that's going to affect like your whole lifestyle, upend your whole lifestyle, and cause 5 people to be showering in one shower every morning? Like is it going to be that bad, or like is it livable? Really is important too, right? Like just the logistics of it, right? Is it going to be a huge undertaking and cause more stress on everyone, right? Then we have everyone at everyone's neck. We're going through this big thing financially, mentally, physically a lot of times, and then that adds more stress to it. So maybe it's better just to kind of bite the bullet and get an Airbnb or get a hotel or stay with a family member for or go camping.
And especially if your day-to-day life affects the containment situation, I would say to definitely not be there, because you don't want to risk that.
That's a big, really good point. Like if you're going in and out of a remediation zone and in and out of a zip door constantly, like, yeah, the less, traction through those areas, the better, right? Like 100%. Yeah. Great point.
Can a mattress be cleaned, or is that a myth?
Oh man, Mythbusters. I think it depends, right? Like we test people's contents a lot, typically with tape tests or vacuum. We can do a vacuum ERMI on things, right? Like we've done that for cars, we've done that for belongings. There has to be enough dust for us to vacuum. I think it's possible, especially with the microbalance stuff, especially with doing like a HEPA pizza, right? HEPA vac, that whole surface, a good solid closed HEPA vac, which we can recommend some of those too. And then cleaning, right, with a microbalance product on microfiber. Here you go, here, I got the travel pack right here. Love it. So using some of those products, right, to clean that off, and then laundering all the bedding, very important, right, with microbalance laundry additive. And then testing, like if you're unsure, like it can colonize into foam, right? Like it can colonize into cotton, into wool, into all these areas. Like it's possible, especially in headboards, we see it a lot, right? When they're right up against the wall, that's a great way for mold to grow on that surface. The conditions have to be right, but it's a porous surface, right? So it can be cleaned. I would say like just test, don't guess if you're unsure. If it's causing symptoms, if you're laying down in your bed at nighttime and you're sneezing or you're having reactions, different inflammatory reactions, then maybe it's time to consider, getting a new mattress, getting a new bed.
Yeah, and I would definitely caveat with like if there's visible mold on your mattress, make that decision, like just let it go.
Yep.
Seriously, because that's where you sleep, and that is where your brain needs to, your
Relax.
limbic system, everything needs to save you.
Yeah,
So
if it's colonized,
yeah,
like there's a big, it's going to be very hard to get it out of that situation, even with the HEPA vac and the microfiber cleaning with microbalance. Like, yeah, probably better to throw that bad boy out and get a new one.
yeah. Okay. Let's see. I have peeling starting around the ceilings and molding of walls where chimneys are. How do I approach this?
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And man, chimneys are just brutal lately. I don't know what it is. We've been on a chimney thing lately where we're seeing a lot of chimneys failing. I mean, there's so much to it, right? They're a major weak point in the building, so it's likely that it's going to occur along with windows. But if you're seeing that starting already, I would say like probably time to have someone inspect it or to just start getting remediation done there. I would like to have someone check the roof, right? So I'd have a couple different professionals. I'd have a roofing professional, chimney professional, check that out around the flashing on the roof. That's a major weak point, right? A lot of the masonry, a lot of times the grout will start degrading and we'll start getting water intrusion through the actual chase. That'll start leaking through the wall and it'll settle around that chimney in the attic typically, or in the wall cavity. So having a proper inspection done to see the gravity of that area is important, but I would almost say like start getting people out there to start looking at it. Professionals like the chimney professional, roofing, someone to check out the attic, and then ultimately a remediation team, right? Like likely there's going to be some growth back there. But if you want to be sure of that, I would hire an inspector or a building biologist to do an inspection there and see the gravity of it, see how big of an issue it is, so that they can write you a proper remediation plan, do testing, see what kind of genuses of mold we're talking about, maybe do some sampling in the living space too to see how much it's affecting that space, maybe do some qPCR testing, get a baseline so that we can compare it after to remediation. And then also to check out other things too, right? Like oftentimes there's an obvious issue like a chimney with peeling and cracking around it, but then there's other issues that we aren't even thinking of that it helps to have an inspector in there to point out for you. Not that we want more issues, but just to be sure, right? If we're going down this remediation route, like it's better to have all your cards laid out on the table and to know what you're dealing with, and then prioritize those situations with your IEP to really get your house back to that healthy standpoint. So
Yeah, and I also want to advocate for, this took me a long time to come to terms with, because you see, all these beautiful, well put together homes all the time, but it's okay to put your health first.
yeah.
And it's okay to say, we're going to do the remediation, we're going to do whatever it takes to get the mold problem solved. And we're going to take some time to do the rebuilding. Like, you don't have to make it perfect right afterwards. We did a couple of things that weren't exactly what we wanted, to close up the walls and to have a workable bathroom. But we came back almost 10 years later and then made it what we wanted. You don't have to do it all at once, because your health is just the most important thing. And feeling better in the home will feel like such a win that, please trust me when I tell you this, you won't really care that it's not perfect when you're healthy. So, I think the most important thing is to get it fixed and to get it fixed right. And we lived with a hole in our kitchen for 3 years, but it really didn't bother me because we were all well. And, it's just kind of, I know that sounds like very hard for some people, but it does get better, and you do, get to a place where you can financially do the things that make it beautiful. And it's kind of nice to not close it back up all the way sometimes, because you want to make sure that you stopped the problem.
Yep.
So anyway, that's just my little soapbox.
I think that's so important. And it's especially with like the chimney issue, like making sure it's fixed at the root cause, right? And like you said, like not closing up fully before you have leak done, you have leak detection done on it. You have those professionals all working together to make sure that that issue is fixed at the root cause. Because if you just now seal it up again and do whatever and throw all that money on fixing it again or rebuilding it again, and that issue happens again, then we're back at square one. But also on the other side of that, I would say don't do nothing, like,
yeah, don't do nothing.
yeah, like definitely get some people out there, but try to, again, woosah, like it's gonna be okay. And I know, Catherine, like you've been through it, I've been through it too, like holes in different areas, but it's like you're gonna feel a lot better just getting that looked at and getting something done, rather than sitting in the wall and now getting potentially worse, affecting more areas and ending up costing more in the long run, health wise, financially wise, and emotionally wise too, right? So
yeah, now we get a leak. I'm the first one with the hammer and the saw opening up the ceiling and pulling out the insulation, because I'm like, you know what, I'd rather have the hole and no mold growth and like, do the drywall later than wait and be like, is it gonna, become a bad situation? So
you gotta quick action sometimes, and perfect is the enemy of good a lot of times.
To my family members, I assure you.
Burn it all down.
Okay. If you're looking for an apartment and you don't get to tour, what signs of mold can you look for? That's a great question.
Did we skip one, or did I see?
We kind of wrote like some of the questions from the article.
Okay, cool.
So I'm kind of skipping to the people's questions.
I'll give that one quick.
Oh, sorry, I missed how do I use the EC3? Will you pop that one back up? I'm sorry. There was okay. When do I use the EC3 cleaning products? Can I use them if I'm in mold still, or do I need to wait until I'm out? Or is any time okay?
I'll let you handle that one. I say any time is okay. I think all times are great for EC3 before.
Yeah, I mean, they can. The beauty of them is they're not going to make anything worse, obviously. And you can use them until you can start the remediation, and then afterwards, for your daily cleaning. I mean, they're really great products. They're not just for mold. They're really they're non-toxic cleaning products, can be used anytime you need a cleaning product, but they can help lower your exposure, in a pretty significant way if you use them correctly and are diligent about it until you can get started on remediation. So, I mean, I would encourage anybody, no matter what point in this you are, to clean, to use a HEPA vacuum, to keep your dust to a minimum, control your humidity. There are many things you can do that will even make you feel better in a not so great home. So don't ever feel stymied by the fact that you can't do it all at once. You can do something, and that's more than nothing. So that's a win. So
important. Yep. So important. The apartment question.
Yes.
Okay. The apartment, I mean, yeah, I would try to do like a mini assessment yourself, right? Look for those signs of staining and moisture, humidity issues, concerns like that, right? Ducting, the actual HVAC system, the ductwork in there, the return, the supplies. Look for those signs. A UV light can be very helpful in that regard. I would get like a 365 UV light that can actually visibly show a lot of water staining. Take that into the bathroom, look at the walls. We're about to post a video about that, about how much you can see, how much is condensing on the walls. And that you can look at like what the actual ventilation is going in there or lack thereof. And then see if they'll let you look at the actual, a lot of times the HVAC system is not actually in the apartment. It's in a bigger area. See if they'll let you look at it, see if they'll let you have a partial inspection. Like we work with people in apartments a lot of times for EMF, but a lot of times sending them swabs and just saying like, hey, see if you can get a swab, if you can do an ERMI, maybe if we can do an amalgam of both and kind of just like get a partial look into what's going on. And then we can kind of help you make that decision. But yeah, look at all those plumbing points. I would say number one, right? The areas that are going to leak the most, the windows, the plumbing points, all that.
My husband and I are considering renting a home. We hired someone to conduct an inspection of the HVAC system and attic. The sheathing on the attic contains heavy amounts of visible and active penicillium. Can you share any insight into the findings and recommendations? And she also went on to say that the landlord's willing to do some fixes, like using a product to clean up the visible mold, and to hire a certified person with the National Air Duct Cleaning Association to clean the ducts and the air handler.
Okay.
So this is a kind of a hard question to answer. I have some thoughts, but you're the professional, so.
Yeah, I mean, so we can like, I'll say like we can definitely book a virtual consultation if you wanted to go like in an in-depth thing, and we could look at photos and testing and all that. I'll definitely throw that out there. But just on first look, like I think, yeah, it's good that they're willing to make concessions and actually do something to fix the issue, because a lot of times they're not, or they're going to say it's not really an issue, or it's not really mold potentially, even if we have testing. So I'm assuming there's testing done, right? Because we have visible and active penicillium, so you're probably seeing hyperfragments. I would say like, yeah, this is an important issue, right? Even though it's just in the attic. You said it's in the HVAC system too. Like, it's important to get this remedy, to get this remediated, and to make sure that it's done in a proper sequence of events, right? Like that's that's a huge caveat. I don't know this RNR 141. I don't know. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said the name out loud, but I'm guessing it is what I'm thinking it is. And I would say probably not the best, but sometimes it's not the easiest situation when a landlord is handling that side of it, right? So unless like you're willing to maybe handle it on your side, like we're going to have to try to make concessions and try to get to a healthy point here. I would say try as much as you can to get him to think about actually removing that mechanically, or like maybe sanding it if it's plywood sheathing. But if it's OSB, it gets a lot trickier and that starts to degrade pretty quickly. But ultimately, we want to have proper remediation controls. We want to have proper removal, not just treating and killing. And then NADCA is great. I think it's a great way to find a good certified duct cleaning company. A lot of times we say like the best ones are the ones who use a truck mounted system that's able to push and pull, not ones who just come in with brushes that are going to tear up flex, because it's most likely there is some flex there. So be careful of that. I think there's a big caveat there. Ask them what they use, ask them how they plan on cleaning it. If they're going to get into the trunk line and actually cut it open and take all the stuff out, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll push everything into a trunk line and leave it there. But the good ones will actually, cut a piece out of that, usually that hard duct, fold it up, and then actually get in there and clean stuff out and make sure that's clean. And then also, depending on what kind of HVAC system it is, pulling out the components is very important, right? If they're going in there and just spraying stuff off or just trying to hit it with some sort of chemical, like, number one, big no-no, because that can create a lot of what we call like the wet sock effect, where you start to get that damp gym bag smell. And number two, they need to actually be pulling those components out, like the blower, evaporator coils, if they're not welded in, and these other things, and inspecting. A lot of times, most times, there's going to be some interior insulation in there that needs to be inspected. And most likely, we should be doing a PRV test on those areas too, to make sure that it was all done appropriately. So yeah, hopefully that helped. That's kind of like the best I can give for right now. But again, we can definitely get a consultation if you'd like to go further.
Yeah, and Jonathan's website is JF Healthy Homes, right? Jonathan.com. Okay, yep. So and you can find how to contact him and how to book inspections either in person or virtual. So please definitely use him as a resource. He's awesome.
Thank you. They said they said something in there that I just saw right now too, that about the ventilation, humidity. Yeah, so that's really important. I would say like definitely get a building science person in there, a building biologist or a building science professional, a ventilation professional who can fix that, right? Like, because ultimately that's going to be what continues to cause this problem, right? Like we want to fix that root cause of that lack of ventilation and humidity that's up there, right? We need some intake from below and exhaust from above, right? You want to create that pathway for air to get in and out. If it's not a closed condition attic, we need airflow in there. So definitely look at that, baffles, and look at the hygrometer to see what's going on in there and how we can fix that situation.
And she did mention that he was willing to purchase a professional grade or commercial grade dehumidifier. But I also want to let you know, someone like Jonathan is really key too, because it could be something as simple and complicated as, maybe the bathrooms are vented to the attic, and just putting a dehumidifier up there is not going to solve the problem. So I know that could be a solve. You just need to you need to make, I know it's not your home and you'll be renting, but hopefully they can make sure that would be the problem before kind of doing it just as a stopgap and maybe not solving it. So
Yeah, man,
um
the exhaust fans into the attic is it's all too
yeah,
common. It's all too
that's a
common.
hill I'll die on. Never,
God,
never, never do that.
every time I see it, I face palm still. I don't know why I'm still surprised, but it's just like, God,
Yeah.
why? You know, I should not ask why anymore. I should not ask why anymore.
Well, we're just gonna do a couple more, guys, because we're getting past the hour, and I don't want to keep everyone too late. But
It's my
let's see.
ranting.
This
I'm
one's
sorry
another
about
long one. I have a history of severe neurological response to exposure of mold and mycotoxins. I'm living in an apartment. I've done ERMI and EMMA testing in this location, both showing elevated counts in multiple spore types. The building is 10 years old. I've lived here 2 years. I'm not aware of sources for these elevated findings. I did these tests because mycotoxin urine tests show many toxic levels of mycotoxins. The urine test may be a combination of my prior living location and present place. My naturopath thinks I should leave. I'm not convinced. I've not yet addressed anything with building management. Do you have questions to offer that I could ask to help me move forward? Ask myself to help me move forward in the decision of action steps.
Yeah, it's heavy. I'm sorry to hear about the neurological response and all that. It's very heavy, and we feel for you, and our hearts go out to you. It's a lot to handle, and it sounds like you're doing a lot of tough kind of decisions too. So it's good that you did the ERMI and the EMMA, which the EMMA you can get from Microbalance, right, on the site, and then you can also
Yes, you
get
can.
the Sport Trap agar plates too, which are really good, specifically for touch type stuff too. We really like to use those. So uh, kind of a tangent there, but yeah. So I would say I'd want to know like what the ERMI and the EMMA testing showed, right? Like I want to kind of see what's going on there, which type of species of mold we're talking about, and the counts, right? And also which locations that was done in. Like we need to kind of get some more information on the home, age of the home. You said the building is 10 years old. Okay. Like what's the building envelope? What's the third skin of the building? What does it look like around it? There's a lot of questions that we want to ask, right? And also I think a lot of that just goes to say like probably an inspection would be good. And I'm not just saying that to say that the inspectors are needed, but it'll help, I think, to give you peace of mind, as much as there might be stuff that they find that might not be the most ideal. I think it'll help you already think of those answers to those questions that you probably already kind of have some in your head, right? Like of what to ask yourself and how to address the next steps. Plus, giving that professional, kind of leaning on to other people to give you that professional advice, and that those next action steps is really our forte, right? That's really our expertise. So to really address and look at the whole environment of the building, compare that. Like even a lot of times, I'm not a practitioner, but I like to see those tests, right? Like the urine mycotoxin test. Like to see all these different tests that naturopaths and practitioners are doing, so I can correlate the environment, both environments, the bodily environment and the home environment. That's so important. All data is good data. Like there's no bad test. I'll scream that. That's the hill I'll die on, I think, Catherine.
Yeah.
There's no bad test. It's all data, and like so long as it's not going to bankrupt you doing the data. Like I think collecting more and more data for us to go on and help you make those decisions is always a good way of doing that, right? So yeah, I would say look and have an inspection done. We do travel. I'm not sure where you're at, but there's also great inspectors that we can direct you to. Great places to search for that: Building Biology Institute, ACAC website, all these different places to find those sources. And then in the meantime, try cleaning with a lot of the microbalance stuff. But I think a good inspection is in order so that they can help you and guide you and really advocate for your health and making those next action steps and plan.
Yeah. And I would tell you if you can take your EMMA test and your urine mycotoxin test and you put them side by side, and the mycotoxins that are clearly on your EMMA test are elevated or in your current urine test, you're currently being exposed in that apartment. I mean, that's just that. I mean, those are the facts, unfortunately. And with the neurological problems, if you can do that and you see those appearing on both tests, then I would probably tell you, since it is an apartment and you're able to leave, I would I don't know. I know I differ from Jonathan there, but your brain is
Oh,
the
it's all
most
good.
valuable thing you have. So I would be like, hold on to that. And I mean, but if they're not the same thing, then you could definitely, maybe make that a safe place to live. I'm not saying like move out, burn it down or anything like that. I'm just saying use the testing and the science, the data that you have to help you think through that for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
that's so important with those urine tests too, is like there's so many caveats, right? And it's
yeah.
an exact science or an exact timeline chronologically, right? So I think that, to your point, like the comparing that to the EMA and it getting the environmental ecosystem snapshot health test on the environment, comparing that to your health test currently is really a good way to look at that, and go over it with your practitioner too, right? They should have some insight there too on how high those levels are, and if it's current exposure or if it's likely past exposure, and also how your health is doing, if you're on protocols, like how you're reacting to that, and taking note of that too, right? Like when you leave your environment, maybe take a mold vacation, right? Maybe go away for a week, maybe go camping, get away, like go somewhere else where you can let your body detox a little bit and breathe, and then come back to that space and see how you feel. A lot of it so much is intuition too, right? Like I think we want these answers so bad, and we want like a clear yes or no. We want like a black and white answer, but so much of it is gray space that we have to give ourselves grace and understanding and patience to really get to those spaces too. But also it requires physical removal sometimes to be able to calm the nervous system and get out of that potential exposure, to understand the gravity of what you're living in, or
Yeah.
potential, right? Like maybe it is previous exposure, but I think having a control like that, almost doing a type of mold test on yourself or a type of exposure test on yourself, is really important to have that data. Again, all good data, right? There's many different ways of testing, many different tools we can use, and I think they're all great.
And wanted to let someone know this call is being recorded. So anywhere you're joining us now, the whole thing will be posted like as a recording. So you can watch it whenever you want, skip ahead, fast forward, whatever. And then we'll take one more. Let's see. Um, do you think spores can be cleaned from ducts instead of removing and replacing the ducts? My understanding is that mold can't be cleaned. It has to be removed.
Yeah, mold. So yeah, mold definitely has to be removed. Spores definitely have to be removed. It depends, right? If we're talking about hard duct, or if we're talking about duct board, or we're talking about flex duct. So I'm going to say likely a lot of it's flex duct, right? Which is causing those issues, and that's very difficult to clean even with the best NATCA systems and the best push-pull pressurization systems. Flex is very tricky because you have a lot of ridges and you have literally like a spiral going through it, and there's little loops and little dips and valleys in it, right? So there's a lot that potentially won't get cleaned out of there. It's going to be better than it was before, and a lot of times there is stuff that's holding on to the ductwork, especially if it's Plutonium or Stachybotrys, a lot more sticky, heavy, dense molds, right, that stick to those walls. But yeah, I think removal is definitely the key. And it just depends on how severe it is. It depends on if that ductwork is damaged, what the exterior of that ductwork looks like, where it's going through, like all these different kind of caveats that need kind of more further in-depth check. But a lot of times it is better to replace flex, just depending on what we see in the actual system, right? Because then we can pretty much assume or make the correlation that has blown through all those supply lines. And if it's something like Etomium, Fusarium, we see in HVAC from time to time, like I'm going to say likely let's clean it. We can always test after to see if it did clean it, but one test in one area is not going to give us the overall picture, where we're usually going to be testing the blower and evaporator for all that, the system. But typically, if it is flex, it's going to need to be replaced if there's a big contamination in the HVAC. For the car duct, a little bit different, right? Because we can have a lot more certainty that internal metal is clean. If it's ductboard, I would say absolutely replace it. That's internally lined, insulated ductwork that we should not be using that ever again, because that's just, there's so much concern with mold sticking to all those walls and becoming a reservoir itself and colonizing in those areas with dust and dander and humidity and all these other issues. So major issue there. So yeah, flex likely, and ductwork.
Yeah. And flex duct isn't that expensive either. Like you'll get your estimate and be surprised. It's really not. And if
Yep.
you see any visible insulation inside your ductwork, replace it for sure. If
Yes.
you've got exposed insulation, it needs to be replaced.
The HVAC is so important too with the HVAC, like making sure that you have a proper HVAC size, properly sized HVAC is super important, right? And like a lot of people will just get those replaced, and then there's no HVAC professional or building science professional potentially doing duct leakage testing or doing blower door testing or doing all the manual testing for these HVAC systems, right? That are sometimes the root cause of a lot of these problems, right? Sometimes that's really the smoking gun a lot of times. Sometimes not, but we want to have that evaluated, especially if we're doing something like spending money to get ductwork replaced. Like have them run that test, have them look at the sizing and make sure all the everything is ducted properly and it's properly chased through different areas. There's no cutoff CFM, no static pressure, all these other things that will start to lead to humidity rising in that area in that system. That's going to lead to growth, right? So
Yeah.
very important having a very good HVAC professional to look at all those different testing techniques.
That's a great point because you could clean the heck out of that ductwork and just have the same problem a couple months down the line if you don't figure out why it was happening.
Oh, it's so hard to see, or replace it, and then it's like the same system with the same oversizing or the same undersizing. It's like square one again after thousands of dollars. Just like hate to see that. So yeah, I would say just do the legwork, evaluate people, make sure they're good HVAC people, and they can do those checks properly.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining and for sticking with us for all this time. We have more questions that we couldn't get to.
Sorry,
hopefully we'll have Jonathan back. He's always a hit because he has so much wisdom on building. And those are, I mean, it's, I think it's so wonderful because I think it's something we all feel very stymied about, like just answers sometimes when it comes to our homes about things like our HVAC systems. And so, and I would encourage you to all reach out to Jonathan if you need anything, because he can point you in, even if he's not the person that helps you, he can point you in the right direction or offer resources. So he's great with that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, we all rise together, and there's so many people that I'm not the expertise in every single field, and we need to lean on one another. And there's so many aspects to a home, like you were saying, Catherine, that need to be professionally evaluated, So yeah, we're happy to recommend or try to, connect people to different professionals and whatnot. And just really, really appreciate y'all. Thank you for the great questions. I'm sorry for ranting a little bit. And I'm happy to answer questions outside of this if anyone would like.
Yeah. And I mean, just if you need to contact Jonathan and you forgot, just like DM us on any of these and we'll send you his information too. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.